What do we make of the latest news out of New Orleans regarding their offensive line and backup running back today? What do we do in drafts to handle the Houston Texans' explosive offense properly? And how likely is one rookie in the AFC West going to be to make a massive fantasy impact this season? Plus, we have a great show with Daniel Wright and Geno Donney, the first time ever FFPC Pros versus Joe's competitors. They will join us shortly to talk about CeeDee Lamb. They will join us shortly to talk about the Bears offense, Derrick Henry, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Greetings and salutations to all of you Ferrelliacs and Balkaholics. I am Eric Balkman, and welcome into the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship over at myffpc.com. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott, and we'll definitely bring him on shortly. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to dish about Bijan Robinson, Jordan Addison's arrest, and how you handle him in drafts. Plus, two first-time FFPC Joes will join us this evening. Very excited to talk to Daniel Wright and Geno Donney. We'll get into Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers, TJ Hawkinson, and much more, along with their strategy as they will be drafting Sunday night, July 28th at 8 p.m. right here on this FFPC YouTube channel as well. If you want to connect with us on X, you can do so at hsffhour, at Eric Balkman, and check out Ferrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/hsffhour as well. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if you have any questions for us. Now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails coming up in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. If you are looking for some action tonight, I'll just bring this up because I'm curious myself to find out how many teams are registered for the midnight draft tonight, which will be popping off for the Fantasy Pros Championship in a little less than 2 hours. We have 9 teams open in that, so we already have 3 teams signed up. It's getting to be that time of year where these drafts are just filling up because people want to get in. They want to get in before training camp. They want to get in before the ADP changes and make sure that they are getting the best bang for their buck possible in the Fantasy Pros Championship. As a reminder, it's a $1 million grand prize, a $6 million prize pool that you can join at myffpc.com. $350 to enter. Remember, every third team you'll get a $50 discount on. So scoop up those 3-packs and take 3 shots at $1 million. Life-changing money could be yours this season with the FFPC. The 2024 FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments are also live. $125 and $35 respectively to join those. A $300,000 grand prize and a $100,000 grand prize. Those are also up from $200,000 and $50,000 from last year. So the prize pools, the grand prizes not only got bigger, but the prize pools got deeper as well. So check those out at myffpc.com. And of course, if you want to play fantasy football literally every day of the year, check out the Dynasty Startups and the Empire Dynasty Startups we have going on right now at myffpc.com. As far as the Empire Leagues, it's something that we just introduced maybe a month and a half or so ago. 50% of the annual prizes, are going to go to that league's Empire pot. The team that wins 2 years in a row will take down the Empire and the Empire pot. The league disbands, and then after the league disbands, everybody gets their deposits back, and you're free to join another Empire League. It's a really fun thing that I knew was going to be popular. I didn't think it would be this popular as people are signing up for those left and right. So make sure you're joining up on an Empire Dynasty startup or just a classic dynasty startup leagues. Those are all available at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Now, as a reminder, and I'll make note of this at the end of the show as well, we're coming up on our most popular broadcasts of the year beginning Sunday night. The annual FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge gets underway at 8 p.m. Sunday night. Ferrell Elliott, Dave Terpoli, and I will be on, I believe Ferrell and I will be on all 6 broadcasts. I think Terp is going to be on all but 1. As of right now, these things could change. But we will be bringing you pick-by-pick coverage of all 6 of these FFPC best ball format drafts. Now, each one of these leagues will feature 6 FFPC Joes that are participating in the main event this year, and then 6 industry pros. The winner of each of these leagues will get a free entry into the 2025 FFPC main event. The 2025 FFPC main event featuring a $1 million grand prize. So there is a lot of skin in the game. And every time we see FFPC Joes that are familiar with the FFPC best ball format going up against 6 industry pros that maybe aren't all the way up to speed as much as the Joes are, it's always entertaining. So we'll invite you to check those out and hang out with us and watch them live. 8 p.m. Sunday, 9 p.m. Monday, and 10 p.m. Tuesday. That's for the next 2 weeks. So we have 6 of them. There's 84 players in total, 42 pros, 42 Joes. There's also a slow draft going on that we will not cover because I can't do a live stream that lasts like 3 weeks. It's just not going to happen. Perhaps I could if I had my good buddy, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, hanging out with me for those 3 weeks. We're not going to try it this year. You're just going to have to settle for an hour with us tonight. Please welcome in Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, welcome aboard, man.
Hey, buddy, how are you? You know, I'm good for hanging out for you any 3 weeks, with the exceptions of the North Woods in Wisconsin. I'm all for you to do that with the family. You stay in the woods, and then I'll be here waiting for you when you get back.
That sounds like a plan. That definitely sounds like a plan, Ferrell. We're excited to bring aboard a couple of Joes here in Daniel Wright and Geno Donney. They're going to be popping on in about 6 or 7 minutes here. Before we get to them, let's talk about some interesting news that came out of New Orleans today, Ferrell. Ryan Ramczyk, former Wisconsin Badger, is going to be missing the entire season, the starting left tackle for the New Orleans Saints. It sounded like he might have been missing the entire season anyway, but once he went on the rules state that he basically has to miss the whole season. I can't remember the actual fine print on that, but I do know he'll be missing the whole season. So this is interesting for not only Derek Carr, but Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller as well. Kendre Miller, this according to the Coach Speak Index today, was being talked about by head coach Dennis Allen. He says he wants to see more consistency from Miller. He mentioned his burst. He mentions his explosiveness and how he made people miss last year. But Allen says he wants to see it more often. Miller last year, if you remember, was hurt a lot. He only played 8 games last year. 73 of his 156 rushing yards on the season came in week 18 against the Falcons, which neither team was really playing for anything. However, he did flash, which is what we're looking for. Alvin Kamara is getting up there in years. We don't know when he's going to fall off the proverbial cliff, but he is the lead back right now. The question is, how much does Kendre Miller cut in to that playing time for Alvin Kamara this year? When we look at the Fantasy Mojo ADP, Ferrell, Darren Armani, godfather of the Pros versus Joes Challenge, at Fantasy Mojo on X, fantasymojo.com. If you're playing in the FFPC, I strongly suggest you subscribe to his website. All the ADP data we cite on this show comes directly from him. As I look at the New Orleans running backs right now, Ferrell, Alvin Kamara is a mid-5th round pick. You can get Kendre Miller in the mid-11th. I ended up taking him in the Scott Fish Bowl a couple of weeks ago. Pretty excited about Kendre Miller this year. Your thoughts?
Okay, he wants to see more consistency. Where does he want to see it? On the field, you got to put the ball in his players' hands. And he's asking him, in the way that they utilized him last year, he's asking him to play like a veteran. He's asking him to come in and contribute in short spurts. And that's difficult for a player to do that's been handed the ball in college. He over 225 rushes, 1,700 yards, a lot of touchdowns in college. Seems like he was in the end zone all the time. That's not an easy way for a player to move and find his way in the NFL from that. So I think the coach's thoughts about what this player could do are a little bit unrealistic, not giving him more chances to carry the ball. And I've got to admit, This was a player that I did not draft last year. A fantasy football fallacy for me personally is that I didn't follow this player very much because I had more teams than I ever had. So I kind of focused on the players that I did have and the players that were backing them up. So I need to watch this player closely in preseason. The 11th round sounds about right for his skill set. There's players in the running back position that are not as skilled as this player that are going in front of him. And when is Kamara going to quit playing? Probably never. He's one of these guys that's, I can either see him hanging it up on his own terms more than I can a lot of other guys.
Kamara is a guy that he's not one of these bruising backs that is coming up on the age cliff where his body has been broken down from running between the tackles for 6, 7, 8 years. He's a guy that thrived in space. He's a guy that caught a lot of passes. So age is still important, but age might be a little bit different for Alvin Kamara this year for sure. And I'll be watching that New Orleans situation very, very closely as we move through these last 6 weeks of drafting before the NFL season kicks off. Now, let's talk about Houston, Ferrell. I've been saying this forever, for many years. There are certain offenses every year that you need to get right in fantasy football, whether you target them or whether you fade them. They sometimes can make all the difference in you playing for $1 million in the FFPC or being in the consolation bracket or not even making your league playoffs. One of those offenses this year, I think, is Houston. Not necessarily that I don't believe in the offense, but I was talking with JJ Zacharyson last night about this on the HSFF show. You have to pay the iron price to get these Texans this year with Stroud, with Dell, with Collins, with Diggs, all these guys, even Mixon to a certain extent as well. Pro Football Talk had a report today quoting CJ Stroud saying that he wants to attack down the field more this year. Now, bear in mind last year, Stroud was phenomenal. 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Stroud led all quarterbacks with a 9.4 ADOT last year, and he ranked 14th in deep attempts, which obviously those are not congruent stats. Stroud's deep completion percentage was second only to Brock Purdy, and his 1,100 yards on those deep attempts also ranked second in the league. He was great when he threw the ball down the field last year. He just didn't do it a lot, and he wants to do it more this year. And, oh, by the way, they added Stephon Diggs this year. I know he's become a little bit of a polarizing player, but I know plenty of high-stakes players that are definitely betting on a bounce back from Stephon Diggs this year. And obviously, if you are throwing down the field more this year and you have those weapons, these are all good things. The question here, Ferrell, is not necessarily does Stroud have the chops to pump up the passing stats. Does he do enough with his legs to make sure that his, I think, quarterback 6, I want to say right now in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts, does he do enough with his legs to make sure that he is going to pay off on that 709 ADP as quarterback 6 ahead of players like Murray, Burrow, Prescott, and Jordan Love?
I think so. I think that the receivers here and the type of offense that the Texans aspire to run will reward the downfield game. Now, last year when he started the season, he had a very, very good check down game. And did he have Dell for all the games last year?
He did not. He got hurt.
And so that's another element that you begin to play into it. Now, I look at his quote here. He wants to throw the ball down the field more. That's been uttered by every quarterback that's ever lined up at the position. And it's but he has the tools to do it. And if you liked his 23 touchdowns and 5 interceptions numbers last year, you should go ahead and buy into what he's going to be able to do this year with all the assets that are added, his experience. The team is better not only on offense, but on defense as well. I think they've got a strong kicking game. They just do a lot of things right, this team. And I think that if you believe in the Texans, you've got to believe it's Stroud. I think he's a value at that draft spot.
Yeah, he might be. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is quarterbacks are slipping a little bit this year compared to where they were going last year. And when you think about everything that, Houston's telling us they want Stroud to be even better this year with their moves in the offseason that they made. And if you can get him in the 7th round and you're looking for a quarterback there, you're happy with your first 6 picks, maybe you built up your backfield, your tight ends, your receivers, then Stroud is a fine pick there.
This front office group, Balky, is out of New England. They know something about winning, and I think so. I think there's some of the elements in the prize people that made the Patriots so good for so many years. I think they're going to excel in every aspect of the game, and they're not hurting for confidence. This kid's got a quiet confidence now about his feet. How often do you want him running? How often is he going to run? And I don't know. We're not talking about an Allen or a Hurts here. We're talking about a player who uses his feet to extend the passing plays, and that'll add to downfield benefit too. And you talk about Purdy being a downfield player. Stroud gets new weapons and improved weapons for the downfield passing game. If Purdy loses Ayuk, we might not see him throwing the ball downfield. That was his major target last year for the long pass play.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. One other offense I want to talk about before we get into Daniel Wright and Geno Donney's interview as they are waiting in the green room, snacking on hors d'oeuvres or hors d'oeuvres, as it were. Patrick Mahomes said the Kansas City Chiefs will not be easing Xavier Worthy into the offense this year. This is a report on ESPN.com. Mahomes says he's going to have to be ready to go. This is the 28th overall pick in the NFL draft. Last season, if you remember when they took Rashee Rice, which a later pick in the draft than when they invested in Worthy, Rashee Rice, 79 catches, 938 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So the easing didn't happen with Rice. It's not going to happen with Worthy. And the fact that Rice did so well obviously should give you the warm fuzzies about Xavier Worthy this season. Now, Marquise Brown is also on this team this year. And with apologies to Marquez Valdez-Scantling speed, there is more speed on this team with both Brown and Worthy this year as well. This could be the most explosive receiver with some pass catching talent. Again, apologize to MVS for this, so that the Chiefs have had since Tyreek Hill. So I'll bring both of them up right now, Ferrell, as far as the Kansas City receivers go. We won't talk about Rice. I don't necessarily want to talk about Rashee Rice in this because I think that's a whole different discussion. Okay. But Marquise Brown, 607, Xavier Worthy, 812, about 2 rounds between them. And actually, Rashee Rice is right in the middle of the 607 as well, or at the 703, beg your pardon, as well. But when you look at this offense, Brown, Rice, Worthy, 2-time Super Bowl champs, top 3 receivers, 6th round, 7th round, 8th round, and they have an all-world first ballot Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. Something's amiss here. What are we missing? What are high stakes players missing that they're letting all 3 of these Chiefs receivers go so late?
There's a wonderful receivers pool, and a number of the rookie receivers that you invested in last year didn't have the Rashee Rice numbers, but people are reinvesting in them, thinking that they're going to get the return that they were looking for last year. Smith and Jigma follows into that definition pretty well. Look. Worthy and Mahomes is speaking football language, not fantasy football language. And I think what he's saying is this player needs to be ready to take his 4 targets a game and catch the ball downfield. He's going to make some glorious catches. He's going to look great on the highlight film, but I don't believe he's going to get enough repetition and enough opportunity to catch the ball and put up the fantasy points that we all want to see unless he's regularly hitting the end zone. And he could do that. But he looks like, a very successful year for him would be 45 catches, 6 or 8 touchdowns, and playing better at the end of the year. That would be a very successful year for Worthy. And I look at his size and I think, that's hard to stay healthy. It's hard to stay healthy for the season. It's hard to stay healthy in game. I think this player is obviously got the required speed to run past anyone in the league, but now he's going to have to run some routes that will, some of the corners in this league he's never lined up against.
Right, and Worthy to me, I love him a lot more in best ball than I do in managed leagues for sure. And you can make that case, quite frankly, with Marquise Brown a little bit too. I don't think I feel that way about Rashee Rice, but Marquise Brown, I think I'd like it as far as best ball goes. I think Worthy is the top target there, given the draft capital that you have to invest. and then you go Hollywood Brown and then Rashee Rice. Still kind of a nebulous situation, legally speaking, with Rice as well. So
when we get to Planet Hollywood, the best ball world will be ended. Bob.
Yeah, it'll be gone.
And I believe that with Brown, I believe this is a match made in heaven. I believe Brown has volume that we have not seen in a long time, and I think he delivers. And I think that's a good draft pick where he's going.
Yeah, Chiefs offense, once again this year, they should be loaded, and it's going to be a lot of fun drafting them. It's going to be a lot of fun watching them this year. Probably not as fun as talking to two brand new FFPC Pros versus Joes competitors, guys that are veterans of the FFPC main event, but they're going to be looking to take out 5 of their own FFPC Joes and 6 industry pros coming up on Sunday, July 28th. That's a week from this coming Sunday, as they will be drafting in FFPC Pros versus Joes League number 4. We're going to welcome them on right now. Please give a one sound hitting. What's the thing that Ferrell, they always say? That the sound of one hand slapping against the other makes a very lovely sound to welcome on our guests tonight. They are Daniel Wright and they are Geno Donney joining us from the Pretty in Pink franchise. Guys, welcome aboard. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Hey fellas. Great to be here.
Yes. Nice to see you guys. Who is who? Oh, wait a minute. There you are, Geno.
Geno's right there. Yep, absolutely.
Nice to meet you, fellas.
It's great hanging out with you. You guys color coordinated, wearing the pink tonight. With very on brand for the franchise. This is exciting that we'll be able to talk with you tonight. Well, fantasy football aside, let's get the business stuff out of the way. Daniel, I'll let you go first on this, and then Geno pop in after he's done. Tell us what you're doing for a living when you're not playing in the FFPC.
It says regular Joe as could be. I'm a server in a restaurant. I've been working in restaurants for 30 years, 23 of them as a server all over the country.
Wow.
I'm currently in the city of Chicago.
Sweet home Chicago.
That's a great place to be a server too, because there's a lot of great restaurants in Chicago for sure.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, I would say so. Geno, what about you?
Yeah, and if he's average, I'm Joe. You picked 2 great guys here. I am a medical equipment salesman, and I work in the Maryland, DC, and Delaware area on the East Coast.
Got it. Okay.
How'd you guys form such a killer partnership?
I was just going to ask the same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've known each other since we were teenagers, and our fantasy football relationship goes all the way back. And I'll let Danny jump into a paper league that predated any internet fantasy. So we've been playing in a house league for a long time. And
about 25 years. Yeah. Geno and I've known each other for a couple of years longer than that, since we were teenagers. But I was 19 when I first started playing, and we used to have to put the scoring on from the newspaper onto a Word document and then fax it to everybody.
If you were still, can you do that for me? Can you fax me the?
That's right. We should dig up an old sheet, Danny. I mean, we might have a couple of old Excel files.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you guys ever keep any of those sheets, like maybe from championship week, and frame them like, this is the year I had Neil Anderson or whatever, and he brought the title in.
I wish. The first player I ever drafted was Barry Sanders.
Oh, Barry Sanders, classic. Yeah, absolutely.
People are different in their email behaviors, and I'm someone who keeps sort of like a running inbox forever. I might have an old sheet buried somewhere on an old Yahoo.
Somebody's got it.
John Terry's already got questions that don't relate to football, but you know what? It's clever, and you might as well go ahead and throw it up there, Bob.
Yeah, they want to know with the Pretty in Pink name. They wanted, or John Terry wants to know, are you guys Molly Ringwald fans or John Cryer fans, or perhaps both? Or maybe John Hughes. I don't know.
I'm an 80s baby, so I'll take Molly Ringwald there. But
I love both equally, but the name was formed really just because Geno and I are both girl dads. We both have little girls that are around the same age. And it was our lives are surrounded by things that are pink. And so we've embraced it. And it was pretty easy to come up with the name of the franchise.
That film validated me as a Psychedelic Furs fan, so that was good. That was good for me.
I'm also the godfather. I'm the godfather to Danny's.
Yes.
To Danny's
wow.
Il Padrino.
You guys are fused at the hip. You guys have chemistry. You got more
Yeah, man.
chemistry than an 8th grade science fair.
We
But
do.
let me ask you who needs some chemistry. Let me ask you who needs some chemistry. And where is he going to find
some chemistry?
I had a whole bunch of other questions, and then I found out you're from Chicago, and you got so. If you were still taking your stats from the newspaper, I think that if you're in Chicago with your new rookie quarterback, and if you invested in Bears in fantasy football, that you might be reading the stats and weeping about the stats. Is there chemistry? How long will it take? Will Caleb Williams mesh with these veteran receivers and bring things together in Chicago? Because I have avoided it like the proverbial plague. Am I wrong?
Man, I don't know if you're wrong. And that's if I could get this question right, I should probably quit waiting tables and be an NFL GM, because it's their responsibility to know, and they don't even know, do they? As often as they get it wrong. But I'll say with the change in the regime and the new offense, and all the talent that they brought in, if he's just average, they're going to be a pretty good offense. What that means for fantasy, I mean, it's a pretty important question, because you got, really 4 guys that are directly impacted by his play, and 5 really, I mean, if you want to count the running back as well, and they're all, being drafted in the top 10 rounds or so in fantasy. So his play affects a lot. It's an important question this year.
I'm waiting for that important answer from Chicago. They're in Chicago. We are now.
And I don't know if you're gonna get it until they get on the field and start playing the games. But
so let me frame it like this, Daniel, because we'll draft before the games start. It sounds like you are not going out of your way to be drafting any of those Bears this year. Well, considering, like you said, all these guys are, Allen, Moore, Odunze, Komet, Swift. They're all going in the top 10 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about all of them. It seems like that the fantasy community hasn't really decided what they want to do yet, because it seems like you can make a case for getting a ton of value at ADP on all these guys, right?
And I love your waiter versus GM job, because as a server, in your profession, if you get a bad table, they're eventually going to leave. If you draft a bad player, you're stuck with him forever, especially in the first round. So, but anyway,
even after they move on, you're stuck with that as part of your legacy.
We're going to have guests next week, Balky.
We're doing the show on Wednesday, but we do have a guest. Yes.
All right. We'll ask that guy about Caleb Williams, and we'll get into that right now. But we'll come back with a very penetrating question pretty soon, Dan.
And we'll get back to you, Daniel, for sure. But Geno, I do want to ask you about the Ravens this year. You look at what they did in the offseason. Yeah, I know they got Tez Walker in the draft, but they didn't spend a whole lot of draft capital to get him. They didn't go out of their way to sign any big-time free agents. If you want to say that maybe the biggest thing they did was John Harbaugh kind of going out of his way to praise Rashad Bateman as a guy it seems like that they're counting on quite a bit this year. But for me, I look at Mark Andrews, I look at Zay Flowers. These are the guys that are going to make that Ravens passing offense go. How do you feel about him this year? I'll just give you the ADPs real quick on him. Mark Andrews right now is the 5th tight end off the board on average in the early 3rd round. Zay Flowers, wide receiver 25, so being drafted as a high-end number 3. He's going at the end of the 4th round. And I guess the other thing that we should probably discuss here is the impact that Derrick Henry is going to have on this offense too. A lot to discuss with the Ravens.
Yeah, there is. And shout out to you, Eric. I don't know if this was accidental, but you teed Danny up with a Chicago question, and then you teed me up with a Maryland question. So your geography is just totally dialed in. Nice work. Yeah. The short answer is I like them both, and I think our prep work has us viewing both of them favorably. Not to get too deep into our methods, but we sort offenses just overall in tiers, and we certainly have Baltimore in the elite tier. And really, even though you can expect sort of like a bottom third, bottom quarter of the league total attempts out of Lamar Jackson in the pass offense, to your point, they did nothing in the offseason. And I would say they actually subtracted targets. The whole Odell Beckham workload and the share is now gone. So it's not a high volume passing offense, as we all know, but I think Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews absorbed basically all of the significant target volume. On Zay, who I hope to have a lot of exposure to at his current ADP, his 108 targets last year was great for a rookie. Even when Andrews was on the field, he and Andrews were tied at about 23% for target share when they were both out there in the pattern. I did a deep dive on Lamar. The most targeted receiver he's ever had in his career was 3-4 years ago. Hollywood Brown had like 140-ish targets. I could see Zay Flowers pushing for the most wide receiver targets Lamar Jackson's ever handed out this year, because there's just no one else to take him. I think Harbaugh's pumping up Rashad Bateman because he needs somebody else out there. I'm a little less high on Mark Andrews, and I'll just throw a couple things out there so we can keep it moving. But the Todd Monken offensive era, which is now in its second year, is significant there. So when you look a little deeper at Mark Andrews, I'm not worried about the age. He's 28. I'm not really worried about the injury history. I still think he's got a lot of miles on the motor, but his depth of target has dropped about 2.1 yards in the first season under Monken. So he's catching the ball closer to the line of scrimmage in this offense. And his target share has dropped. He used to be a league leader or second at the position in target share every year, and that seems to have come down. So love Zay Flowers at the ADP, like Mark Andrews at the ADP, and he finds himself in an interesting spot, sort of behind that crop of young, exciting tight ends.
There's a team over in Pittsburgh calls themselves the Steelers, Daniel. I am looking at their backfield, and I don't think I'm targeting either running back, but many times you need a running back, and they begin to disappear at about the area that Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are going in the draft. And I'm curious your thoughts on these players. And beyond that, why are they bunched so tightly in the draft? Will they will one of them likely emerge? Is it a 50-50 committee? And will Justin Fields ever hand the ball off to him? Those are the questions I have about the Pittsburgh.
Yeah, good questions. When I think about Pittsburgh and I start just sort of with the whole team, it's like they got their DeLorean out and went back in time, possibly by hiring Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. I mean, it just seems like they're just dialing it up for a 13-10 rock fight every week. They just want to get nasty. It's going to be a lot of football cowboy, hat on a hat. Let's win at the line of scrimmage, which is not great for fantasy player value. I do think they're so close in ADP because it's very close to a split decision. You mentioned Justin Fields. I do think Justin Fields will eventually start. I don't think he will start the year as the starter. I think it probably will be Russell Wilson first, but they don't have anyone to throw the ball to. I think this is in my world, this is a poorhouse offense. This is a weak offense. I would say if you're on a 0 RB or a hero RB build and you get to the very end of the 7th round, which is kind of where they're going within a few picks, taking the second one of these two guys who's available, because I do see it being sort of a split, is not bad in that build. Not to talk too much about our strategy, but if, people can look at our teams. Oftentimes RB2 is not the strength of our team. So if you're out there and you build sort of like us, this is kind of maybe the type of player you're looking at. But I'll throw one or two interesting things out there to you. Jaylen Warren, who everyone loves, he's so darling. 315 career NFL touches, 5 total touchdowns, none receiving. He gets in the end zone once every 63 NFL touches. Okay. Najee Harris's rate is much better. He's got 28 touchdowns and 834 pro touches, and he gets in the end zone once every 35 touches. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be near the goal line a whole lot. So if you want a very sort of like medium floor, low ceiling, safe guy, grab one of these at the end of the turn. Pick the guy who's available second.
Yeah, and it's weird because I was just talking with somebody the other day. It seems like everybody loves Jaylen Warren better than Najee Harris that I talked to. And yet Harris has the slightly higher ADP, which makes no sense because it's the silent majority, right? That everybody's taking Harris first. But I'm with you. I think that I think you can tell yourself a story about either one of these guys, and especially if you load up on 4 receivers, a tight end, and a quarterback, and you're looking in the 7th round, you need a running back. Boom, you get one of these Steelers guys. It could pay off big time.
I would love to sit live at a table next to you guys because that was the biggest undersell of possibly taking Pittsburgh Steelers running backs that I ever heard. If you sold medical equipment like that, I would say, Geno, thank you. No, I'll go carve a crutch out of a piece of wood in the back room or something.
It costs money to sit at the table with us, but you're more than
welcome. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not optimistic on the Pittsburgh offense. The two running backs,
and I can understand why. But you tried to keep it positive, and God bless you.
Yeah, they're the only 2 pieces I would own, though. To be fair to them too. Yeah, they're ownable. Sure.
With Arthur Smith, what's the one thing we know he loves to do? Pound the rock, right? And he's got 2 guys to do it there for sure.
This is 2024. Pittsburgh might run the ball more than they throw the ball.
Right? Yes. Yeah. That's true. Daniel, I want to get back to you with this TJ Hawkinson thing that's going on right now in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. He is going off the board, tight end 14 at the 901, which would be a fantastic value if he was healthy. But this guy is coming off a late December ACL tear. People are still investing in him. They're investing in him, quote unquote, late in the 9th round. Does that seem like a good buy for you at that point, or is that still too high given that this guy might not be right till later on in the 2024 season?
Yeah, I mean, short answer is no. I mean, I don't think it's a value. Last year, I don't think I ever had more exposure to an individual player in any season than I had Hawkinson last year. Geno and I planted our flag on Hawkinson Hill. Drafted him every opportunity that we could. We said this guy's going to be the new tight end number 1, and he's not being drafted as such. And with elite quarterback play in that offense, it seemed like that was about to pretty much be true before the injury. And here we are, a year later. I mean, 8 torn ACL. We've got a lot of data to pull from on running backs coming back from ACLs, and not so much tight ends. I don't know if it'll impact it the same way, but running backs the first year really, they really don't usually come back to be the player that they were. So I don't expect them to be tight end 1. And I don't really expect them to be anywhere close to that because that was sort of contingent on elite quarterback play, which is what he got from Cousins last year. So when's he going to come back? I mean, maybe week 5, but they have a week 6 bye. So realistically, it's probably more likely to be week 7. So how many weeks are you going to get out of him? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6 weeks. If you make the playoffs, maybe a few more for a 9th round pick with who's going to be playing quarterback for those weeks as well. I got to say, no, I love Hawk the player. Maybe next year for me.
Okay. Now, because it costs so much money to sit at the table with you guys, I have given up my seat to our good friend in the chat room, David Levy. And David has a response about there's no one to throw the ball to on the Steelers. He says no Pickens. So Daniel, how would you throw the no Pickens flag up at Geno and say, hey, wait a minute, what about Pickens?
Yeah. Pickens is a nice player, and Geno knows that. And I think that what Geno really was getting at was that there won't be much of a pass offense.
Gotcha. And I can see that. Well,
and Arthur Smith, I mean, he's not shy about it. We know what he wants to do.
Yeah, and he disappeared Drake London too. So I thought Drake London was a mystery figure for here is a true mystery.
Real quick, Ferrell. Bear in mind with Pickens too, when we talk about this Pittsburgh offense being so ball dominant with running the football. If you want Pickens on your team, he's at the 4-5 turn in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. That is an awfully high pick for a guy that might be playing on a team that's going to be operating as moving the ball down the field with running the football. So I think that's the other thing
that's pretty close to where Drake London was going last year. Is he?
Yeah.
I don't think he's nearly the
No,
talent
for me,
that Drake
dog.
London is. Right.
Yeah.
No,
Randy Jackson making an appearance tonight. We love it. We love it.
Well, okay, here's another mystery player. Let's move down the road to Indianapolis, right down the road from good old sweet home Chicago. I've never seen much happen at the receiver position outside of Pittman there. Downs is an impressive young and smaller player. Pierce, I had bigger thoughts of. Now it's Adonai Mitchell. What are your perceptions? Let's stick with you, Daniel, because you are on a roll. Your perception of how Mitchell works with Richardson and successfully moves the ball on an offense that is more balanced and more complete with a true number one receiver and a first-round drafted running back. Is there room for Mitchell to score fantasy points?
I'm going to have to say no. I don't really think that there is room. That's a great way to phrase the question. I mean, you got Pittman, who commanded over 150 targets last year. And then as a rookie, working the inside, Downs was close to 100 himself. And although Mitchell has the size, the athleticism, the ball skills, he's got that catch radius. I don't know that he possesses the route running really to command enough targets to really be fantasy viable on a week-to-week basis if everybody's healthy. Unless Flacco gets in there. Maybe Flacco could support more assets than Richardson does, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in the pass offense with Richardson in there. And as far as volume, this is a team that I think ultimately wants to be balanced and run the ball with their quarterback and their running back, and they got two guys that can really get open. So I like the player, but in that range, I prefer other guys like Leggett and Polk and Pearsall and even Downs. He's going ahead of Downs. Downs had, I think, a pretty good rookie year.
Yeah,
I don't see him coming in and really doing much damage to what Downs was able to do. And in that range, I'm going to have to take a pass maybe next year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, on A.D. Mitchell too. The thing, and we could do this all day, but hashtag better best ball player than managed league player, right? And with Mitchell too in the 14th round, I think that's a home run swing right there. It probably won't work out, but if it does, then it could really pay dividends. But again, with a field stretcher like him, knowing that there are two pretty talented possession guys on that team with Pittman and Downs, not to mention Jelani Woods, who a lot of high stakes players seem to be on this year as well. I don't know if the volume is going to be there for Mitchell for sure. So Geno, let's throw it back to you here. Jerry Jeudy is a player I want to talk about with you. He's going at the 1205 in the Fantasy Pros Championship. And this is a Cleveland offense. We just mentioned Joe Flacco on Indy. He's not on Cleveland anymore. It's going to be Deshaun Watson. They went out and signed Jameis Winston. So if things go awry with Watson, or if he gets hurt again, or if he's not ready to go with that shoulder, Winston's there, which is, I think it's good for Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy is the interesting one in the Cleveland offense, though, because this is a guy that not only did Cleveland give up all this draft capital to get him on their team, but then they paid him. They signed him to that extension. Cleveland loves Jerry Jeudy, Geno. Do you love Jerry Jeudy for fantasy?
A heck of a lot more than I do. To me, the move is a bit of a head scratcher, and I'll start with this. 2 seasons ago, Deshaun Watson wasn't eligible for a full season, but the better Cleveland quarterback was Jacoby Brissett. Last season, Deshaun Watson is in the fold. The better quarterback was Joe Flacco. I think 3 might be the charm. Deshaun Watson's there. I would not be surprised if we see Jameis Winston at some point, and for the 3rd year in a row, the understudy outperforms the lead act. So I'm not big on the quarterback play, and count me among the people who don't have a lot of confidence in Deshaun Watson. This is not a Deshaun Watson question, but look at his completion percentage before and after the long absence from pro football. So if they are able to throw the ball well in that offense, which I'm skeptical about, you already have like a truly bona fide target hogging number 1 receiver in Amari Cooper, assuming he's there. and you have a great tight end. I love David Njoku's physical makeup and his skill set. I think he's one of the more underrated football players in the league in the football sense. So, you got to watch the Amari Cooper news here because that's a fluid situation. But let's just assume Amari Cooper's on the roster and David Njoku's on the roster. I don't think it's a great quarterback situation, particularly while Deshaun Watson is there, and he's clearly the number 3. Looking at the player a little bit more, and I've never done this analysis, but in his career, which is lengthy now, he's played 4 full seasons. Jerry Jeudy's mustered 11 touchdowns. Now, he played in a crappy Denver situation, so we'll give him a little bit of a pass. But when you've recorded 11 touchdowns in 4 years and 18 drops, and your drop to touchdown ratio is, -7 in favor of drops. I mean, for his career, his catch rate is under 60%. So you're talking about a guy, if you told me he was going to Kansas City and I could project this huge leap forward in the quality of his quarterback play, maybe I'd look at it a little bit differently. I think the draft capital and the contract capital kind of are GM mistakes, to be honest. And, I think he's just kind of almost irrelevant as a late round 12th rounder. And not to get too much into strategy, but typically I'm pushing Pretty in Pink is on like the rookie wide receiver aisle at that point in the draft, right? I'm not in the maybe there's a chance Jerry Jeudy is good aisle.
I don't know where it is. Can't find it, I don't think.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of this Politico stuff on television and on social media, and it's getting to be that time of every 4 years, and I've learned a technique, and it is ceding my time back to the chairman. So, Chairman Balkman, I will pass you the 8th question to throw at Geno because I think it's a compelling question, and then we're going to talk about your upcoming tournament that you're in, and I believe there's pros there, and I don't much talk about pros guys. I'm a real Joe's guy, and so I'm going to let Balky ask you about what do you think about the pros guy, and then we'll talk to Joe's, which is what I prefer.
So Sunday the 28th. Do you Geno? What pick do you guys have in that draft? Do you know?
2. Yeah.
2. Okay. All right. So you're picking second. Oh yeah, that's right. Because Josh Hayes from Rotoballer is picking first, and then Dan Williamson and Bradley Stalder from Stack Hunters, Player Profiler, they're picking third.
And those guys are both pros, Balky.
Those guys are both pros. Yeah.
There's a couple you'll beat, fellas.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Now, you guys obviously are talented main event drafters. I know you've drafted FFPC best ball teams before to some critical acclaim. How much planning have you guys done already in trying to attack this unique format? Because you're not going up against 11 Joes. You're going up against 6 industry pros. And who the hell knows what those guys are capable of when they get to the computer. Or their device and draft their team. So, Geno, what's the strategy? And I know you don't want to give a whole lot away, but how much planning have you guys done already?
Yeah, a lot. And for us in this particular cycle, this will be our first draft also. So as we've been kind of doing a lot of our plans, we tend, we're not super early in the sequence. We like a little bit more information. So this will be our first draft. We've prepared for it quite a bit. I'll use one player that we already talked about as a great example. There was a TJ Hawkinson question.
Yep.
So, it's winner take all. It's 17 weeks. It's total points. It's not head to head. I mean, there are so many fundamental differences in a best ball format. A player like TJ Hawkinson in a main event draft, Danny was talking about the eligible weeks before you get to the end of the regular season in the short window. A player like that you grade and you view totally differently when your runway is all the way out to week 17, and you have a lot more time and exposure. So we do rank players differently. The positions move differently. The quarterback market is totally different. I would say our core strategy of how we assemble teams will still be followed, but we've really who we expect to sort of be available where and who we're targeting because the format is very different. I would say as a Joe, the one thing that I appreciate is we're kind of hard to scout, right?
Yeah.
For the pros, being at 1-3, and we have not done that yet, but Danny and I are going to take some time this week. We're going to look. I mean, we all know this. When you have a bunch of teams, you tend to have exposure clumped on certain offenses and certain players. So we'll take a look and see if there's any commonality to be gleaned from our neighbors. But yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Let's go, Joes. Come on, Joes. Let's go.
Yo, Joe. Absolutely.
Well,
I'm with
I
Ferrell.
think you're very easy to scout because it's already. I can see that your number one quarterback is already Caleb Williams, and I also understand because it's like Hawley and Cox from down here in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. You saw right through me, huh, Ferrell?
If you ever come down to Kentucky, you'll meet these guys named Hawley and Cox, and they play. And you guys remind me of those because when you ask them a question they don't want to answer, one of them scratches his head and the other one talks about something completely different. and that's exactly what you guys should do. So, but listen, I love what you do with the language. You know, I love you using the word runway there. And earlier you used the word muster there, and I think that. You know, you're going to go in here and I'm going to watch your draft very, very closely. Balky, how many of them are we doing this one on the air?
Yeah, absolutely. This will
be that'll be fine, and your buddy Sean Green will be in there, and it's going to be good. So I'm really, really looking forward to it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And as Sean said, you know, the division's loaded not only with pros but FFPC Joes as well. Sean was just on the podcast. God, I want to say like a month or so ago too. So it was great talking with him. And we'll definitely, I'll send you guys a link to the StreamYard next Sunday. See if you guys can pop on and make a pick on the air. That'd be tremendous as well. Ferrell, I am fresh out of emails for the guys, so it's on you for the final question, my friend.
This final question gets worded a little different. You guys are very positive. Tell me somebody you're fading besides Hawkinson. We talked enough about Hawkinson. Tell me somebody you're fading that you really don't like, that you won't draft anywhere. Let me hear that player's name. Don't tell me that every player has value at a certain round. Don't want to hear it. I want to know who you don't like. See, Doggy, when I'm scratching his head,
I'm happy to go first.
To talk about baseball.
Ferrell, you brought his name up earlier. I can't see a scenario where I have a single share of Drake London on any team.
Wow.
I can't see it.
Wow. Tell me why.
The absolute best case scenario for what I think he could achieve this year, which is maybe scratching what I call the magic barrier of 90 and 1200. And I don't even I'm trying so hard to be optimistic to even put him on.
That's optimistic.
I don't put him anywhere close to that. But even if he got to 90 and 1200, even if he got there, he would just be worth his current ADP. So all the enthusiasm is baked into the ADP. This is the thing with the Falcons this year. And Drake London is the best example. Everyone is assuming a 35-year-old Kirk Cousins moving to a new team and a new offense with a new Achilles is just going to be the regular old Kirk Cousins. There's no concern built into Drake London's ADP.
If you see Cousins struggling, do you have a piece of equipment that you can send south?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah. And he might need it. Although they'll just go to Michael Penix. But either way, I just think there's no upside in him. I mean, Drake London's being drafted for his absolute ceiling. And I frankly think he's more of a middling player. Even with a new coach and a new quarterback, I have him more as like a 70-ish catch, 1,000-yard, 4 or 5 touchdown guy. So
that could be
low on him.
And Daniel, enough of this negative Ned stuff. Tell me somebody that you absolutely love.
Well, I'll give you my fade first real quick. I don't have much to add to that because
the loving aspect, Balky, has been left at the curb.
I don't have much to add.
He'll do it. To
what Geno said because it's for all the same reasons, and it's Kyle Pitts. I think that healthy, good quarterback play is already baked into their ADPs, and everything is exactly the same as far as how we feel about Drake London and Kyle Pitts, except we actually like Drake London, the player, and think he could be a great NFL receiver. I just don't think he's in the right spot at the right time. Kyle Pitts, No, thanks. You can have him.
Yeah.
Who do I want? Who do I want shares of? And
real quick, Daniel, just real quick, just to let the listeners know, Drake London currently going at the 206 in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Kyle Pitts going at the 401. Again, two players that if they hit, then fine. You got them where you got them. But if they don't hit, then you're behind the 8 ball a little bit.
I agree with you. That 206 is a little rich for me for that.
A little rich.
Yeah. You really have to do a lot to return any kind of value on that ADP.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Daniel, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, you're good. Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is the guy I want to get a lot of shares of. I mean, look, there's a lot of factors that we think about here in fantasy football when we're trying to figure out who we like. But if I had to break it down to like the most simple equation, it's talent meets opportunity. And that's where you have success. And the opportunity that's been created there is a massive one. And I know, we're not chomping at the bit. One of the first things Geno and I talked about in this sort of cycle of preparation for drafts this year was that with Jim Harbaugh moving to the Chargers, I mean, we're not really chomping at the bit to like go draft Justin Herbert and like, throw passing options for that team. But man, the vacated targets between Keenan Allen, the top 3 target earners on that team are gone. Keenan Allen and Eckler and Gerald Everett. I mean, that's almost 300 targets that are just gone. And they didn't really do anything other than draft Ladd McConkey to fill that void. And I know there's a lot of people that think Josh Palmer is going to, step up and, take some of that role away. And he's been a decent player, but I think it's fair to say that he's been given several opportunities to kind of be the guys, because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are always hurt. I mean, one of them is always hurt, if not both. So the opportunity has really been there for him, and he hasn't really seized it. So I'm not a huge believer in that. And yeah, I mean, what we saw out of Johnston last year, kind of the same. I mean, he really had a big opportunity to show that he's that alpha guy that they drafted him to be. And it just doesn't look like he's that kind of player. McConkey has breakaway speed, huge playmaking ability. He can play inside or out. I know a lot of people are kind of pegging him as a slot guy because he's gritty and white, but I mean, the kid is fast. The kid has that stop on a dime ability that drives corners absolutely mad. And I think he's just going to be open, and he's just going to get a ton of targets. And I think that like a rookie season, like what Jalen Waddle did a few years ago, where he had 140 targets and had like 100 grabs for about 1,000 yards and 6 tutties, is pretty good value for a receiver that's coming off the board in the middle of the 7th round at like pick 80 or so, the 40th receiver off the board. Give me all the shares of the wee lad.
Yeah, Ladd McConkey right smack dab in the middle of the 7th round there. And obviously his ADP went up after the NFL draft, but there's a reason it went up, and I think, Daniel, you did a great job explaining that. Geno, is there a player that you really like this year?
Yeah, there is. I'll give you one, and I think it's Tank Dell, but I'll say Tank Dell / Houston 3. I think it would be very, very, very rare that Tank Dell's not the 3rd Houston receiver left on the board, but it could happen. If it is Tank Dell in particular, I love waiting for the 3rd one of those and getting the best value on whoever, is left from the Houston wide receiver trio. I think Tank Dell is special. Danny and I analyze legendary or league-winning upside. And obviously Tank Dell hasn't shown it statistically yet, but when I watch him as a player, I see it. I feel like he's got it. I'm super high on that offense. I know you talked about it a little bit while we were in the green room, but I'll just point out, look at the Houston schedule. Look at the quarterbacks that they play this year. Houston has a run, and if you kind of want to glance, they play like 10 Hall of Famers in a row. They're going to be in a lot of very tough, high-scoring games this year. Okay, they're probably not going to win 11 or 12 games. I think the football side people are overly optimistic. I think it's going to be a monster fantasy offense, and if you think of like the old school, here's for all you old men out there, right? This is average Joe time, right? Old school Jerry Porter season as a quote unquote third wide receiver, old school Brandon Stokely season as a 3rd wide receiver, old school, I wrote down Ricky Prohl, greatest show on turf, 3rd wide receiver. I see that offense being like that. And even if they're all healthy for all 17 games, which I think is unlikely, there's still enough there for Tank Dell to be an absolute monster. So give me Tank Dell or the Houston third.
This has got to be the first time in a decade Jerry Porter's name has been uttered.
Right, baby. Never, right? Never.
Yep, absolutely. This has been so much fun, guys. Talking to the Pretty in Pink franchise owners tonight. Daniel Wright, Geno Donney, drafting second overall in the FFPC Pros versus Joe's Moonshine number 4 draft coming up 8 p.m. Sunday, July 28th. We will have that for you right on this here FFPC YouTube channel, as well as the Better Sports Network is going to be covering it, and all our socials will have that broadcast. Guys, we'd love to have you back on for a quick 5 or 10 minute interview during the draft. If you could make a pick on there, that'd be fantastic, because this was a treat for Ferrell and I tonight, and I know the same thing for the viewers. Good luck not only in the Pros versus Joe's competition, but good luck trying to bring home that $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event this year. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having us, man. It was a good time.
Thanks, guys. Be good. See you soon. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Daniel Wright and Geno Donney joining the program tonight. They have the Pretty in Pink FFPC franchise, and they'll be drafting second overall in the Pros versus Joe's draft number 4, Sunday, July 28th. Yeah, David Levy actually pointing this out too on YouTube. Geno doesn't sound like a Joe to me. And Ferrell, I think that's why we love the Joes so much, is because guys like Daniel and Geno, we root for these guys to destroy the pros in the draft. Like, we are big Joe stans, and the Joes have had a lot of success in this format, and I think it continues again this year.
Well, I always bet the favorite, Balky, and that's the Joes.
It is the Joes, for sure. Let's get into, we got a few minutes left. Let's do a few emails here. Mike in Miami. Hey, Balky and Ferrell, how about an hsffhour throwback? Could you play a Would You Rather with Nick Chubb? Thanks so much. That's Mike in Miami. We have not done a Would You Rather.
Is this a parlor game, this Would You Rather? What is this?
Would You Rather, to remind all the viewers out there, is a game that we used to play way back in the Dizzle days of the show.
Oh, okay.
Where we would, the viewers or listeners would give us a player, and then I'll put you on the clock, Ferrell, and you got to tell me, would you rather have Nick Chubb or this player? And we'll try to find out how you feel about Nick Chubb, because he's going kind of far down in drafts right now.
Well, okay. So just any player, or does it have to
running
be
running back,
and just any running back, or does it have to be a running back that's in his same round?
In his, similar ADP. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, because I know you'll take Jahmyr Gibbs over Nick Chubb, but what if I said, Ferrell, would you rather have Nick Chubb or Chase Brown? What would you say?
John Terry just put up something that was fantastic. You got 5 on it, Balky?
Yeah, we got to bring back. I got 5 on it. I
forgot. You got 5 on it? John Terry, man, he really hits them sometimes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, what's the question?
We're going to go with, would you rather draft Nick Chubb or would you rather draft Chase Brown?
Chase Brown's up and comer, going to be available the whole season. I don't know about Nick Chubb. Let's go Chase Brown.
All right. Would you rather draft Nick Chubb or the new Chargers running back Gus Edwards?
I think I would rather draft Nick Chubb, because at the end of the season, the double-digit weeks, Nick Chubb could have the excellence that is Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb or his real-life teammate Jerome Ford?
No, well, Jerome does some nice things, but he's no Nick Chubb.
Okay. All right. So let me go the other direction here. Nick Chubb or Trey Benson, the rookie in Arizona?
Well, you got to love rookies. Those guys that were just on here did. Let's go to Trey Benson.
You're going to go Trey Benson. Nick Chubb or Javonte Williams?
Javonte Williams, I'm going to put over all these guys you mentioned. So it's Javonte Williams. And he's coming back from an injury that he came back from last year.
Right. But this first full year. So now we should see a healthy Javonte Williams this year. Last one, Nick Chubb or the new Giants running back Devin Singletary?
Ooh, you know what? They got to get things out of Singletary that I've always thought he could deliver. So I'm going to go Singletary.
You're going to go Singletary. So that, I think you are a little bit more bearish on Nick Chubb, but it's close. I mean, I think you're right around where the market sits on him. Running back 37 at the 9-11 right now in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. Moving on, Patrick and Mike in Miami hopefully enjoy that. Patrick in Bloomington, Illinois. What's up, gentlemen? Are you guys moving Jordan Addison down your draft board after his DUI arrest? Jordan Addison, if we look at the ADP on him right now, he is going as wide receiver 44 at the 8-12. This is Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, Roma Dunze territory. I'm not really bumping him down any. Ferrell, he wasn't a target for me to begin with.
Right.
The second target on that team, at least for the start of the season. If Hawkinson comes back week 7, week 8, all of a sudden he's the third target on a team has Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. That doesn't intrigue me too much. So I'm not really moving him down, but quite frankly, I wasn't that interested to begin with.
What do I have to spend for him today to get him?
Today, 8-12 is where.
Yeah, and I think I can find receivers in the 14th round that have his statistical profile.
Yeah. So why pay up for Addison? And 6 rounds earlier, there's no reason to. Tom in Dayton, what are the chances Bijan Robinson finishes as RB1? There's sort of a big 3. And we appreciate the email, Tom and Dayton. There's sort of a big 3 for running backs right now, Ferrell. Obviously, McCaffrey at the top, 101 on average. And then you look at Breece Hall and you look at Bijan Robinson. Those are the 3 running backs that are going in the first round, and they're all going in the first half of the first round. I think Bijan Robinson's getting steamed up a little bit. As I look at the mojo, I see he did go 101 overall within the last 5 days of the Fantasy Pros Championship. And I think there's a lot to like about him in Atlanta. The fact that the drumbeat is they want to get him the ball more. They want to get him in space more. They want to throw to him more. A guy who, I don't want to say suffered under Arthur Smith last year, but it was frustrating at times to have Robinson on your team. That's not there anymore. You don't have to worry about Arthur Smith. And so I think the likelihood that he finishes as the 101, it's not probably as good as McCaffrey, but I think it's close.
It well could be, and your draft position will determine what you get to do with Bijan Robinson. And if you play multiple teams and you have the one and you don't have him yet, and you want to have him on your team, you might have to spend that number 1 for it. I like Breece Hall better. Naturally, I like McCaffrey better. But it's very, very close, and you can't argue it in any way, in any conversation, Falls. You cannot argue it.
The last question we'll have tonight, we'll go back to the YouTube chat. Our good buddy Permar99 hanging out. These 2 players are going back-to-back in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts right now at that 6-7 turn. He wants to know, what do we like better? Do we like Zamir White better or David Montgomery? Ferrell, I have an opinion on this. I'll let you go first.
I like Zamir White better because there is no there are less offensive weapons, especially in the backfield, than there are in Detroit. And Montgomery's opportunities are impressive, although limited. And I love what they do with Montgomery down around the goal line, but I'm interested to see what Zamir White can do with 225 carries. I think he gets them.
I'll say this, as far as my teams go this year, I would imagine it'll probably be pretty close between these 2. If I have to pick one, it's probably going to be Montgomery. I usually break ties in favor of the better offense. And while I understand that there are, you have Laporta and you have St. Brown and you have Jahmyr Gibbs on that team. And what do the Raiders have? They got Adams and nobody else really in that running back room, unless you're an Alexander Madison fan, and hopefully you're not. But the thing I like about Montgomery is that offense is going to move. He's going to be on the field a lot. And if Gibbs were to go down, boy, Montgomery is just a smash then on those weeks where you can start him as that, a top 10 running back. And I don't think you can say that about Zamir White. So I lean towards Montgomery there, although I already do have Zamir White on a few teams too. So do as I do, not as I say, apparently, on the show tonight. As we wrap things up, Ferrell, we will all check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. KFFSC.com is where to go. The leagues are filling up there as far as the main event goes, live in Cincinnati in, less than a month, right?
It is, and things are really beginning to pick up. Our good friend Dom Gazzetti checked in tonight. He's a new player coming. We have a lot of new players coming and making the trips, and a lot of guys that are dealing with a variety of personal obligations. Some guys with some surgeries, some guys, and everybody checks in and says, I'm going to find a way to play whether I'm there or not. We want you here. And, the guys that were just on the with us, Geno and Daniel, they can get here quickly from Maryland and Chicago. We'd love to have them. So it's a great, wonderful time. And Balky, you'll be doing a show from the KFFSC draft, and your presence there in all of its complimentary ways is always enjoyed. So we're looking forward to it, and I appreciate you talking about it.
KFFSC.com is where to go, Ferrell. We will do this again on Sunday night as we cover Pros versus Joes. I will send you the information shortly. Have a great weekend, my friend.
You mean this Sunday?
This Sunday.
Wow.
Sunday.
You mean we're going to be back here this Sunday?
This Sunday. Absolutely.
Cancel my plans.
You're the man, Ferrell.
Right,
the viewing public appreciates it. We'll talk to you then.
See you then.
That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, joining me on the show tonight. I want to thank him. I want to thank Daniel Wright, Geno Donney for joining the program. And, of course, as always, the FFPC, Rob Bryson, of course, each and every one of you. As I said, this show will be back next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Five-time FFPC main event and Fantasy Pros Championship league winner John Anderson is going to hop aboard at 10 p.m. on Wednesday because I have a prior obligation on Friday. So we will do the show on Wednesday. But you don't have to worry. You don't have to wait that long for us to go live again, because we will be going live this Sunday night at 8 p.m. Ferrell Elliott, Dave Terpoli, and myself calling the action from the Pros versus Joes League Number 1. This is the Seltzer League at 8 p.m. this Sunday. Matt Shelf from Draft Sharks, Peter Overzet from Fantasy Life, Theo Greminger from Player Profiler, Stacy Perez from Fantasy in Frame, Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys, and, of course, Todd Burrows from Sharp Football Analysis. Those will be the pros. As far as the Joes, we're going to have Javon King, Robert Trends, Greg Mestretto, who was just on the road of his high stakes lowdown with me last week. Another former guest on the show, Scott Hoyt, is going to be drafting his team in the Pros versus Joes Sunday night. Wilson Moy, a guy we had back on this past winter, former guest of the show, he will be drafting a team. And, of course, another former guest of the show, Derek Capps, will also be drafting his team from the 11 spot Sunday night. So tune in for that. We'll have live pick-by-pick coverage. In case you missed the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show last night on the Better Sports Network, JJ Zacharyson from Late Round and I chopped it up for 2 hours. A lot of great stuff from him on that. A lot of player takes, but we got into draft philosophy and his draft guide as well. That really helps you understand the nuances of drafting and attacking each position in your high stakes league. So make sure you watch that back at the FFPC YouTube channel at your convenience. Remember, the Fantasy Pros Championship drafts has drafts filling daily. In fact, as I look at the draft tonight, we still have 8 spots available. It goes off in about 40 minutes or so. So make sure you're signing up for that to get that draft going and kick off your weekend in style. $1 million grand prize in that competition, $6 million prize pool. Don't forget about the best ball and the Superflex best ball tournaments over at myffpc.com. And, of course, Empire Dynasty Startups and Classic Dynasty Startups all going on at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified by clicking that notification bell so you know every time we go live going forward, which will be Sunday night at 8 p.m. as we kick off the 2024 iteration of the Pros versus Joes competition. Thanks so much for watching, listening, streaming, downloading. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Quick personal story to close things out. Tuesday night, went to my son's baseball game, 10 years old. I had to commish a draft. I was commissioning the draft from the ballpark, or getting ready to commish it. And I also had to do, I was going on Fantasy Alarm on Sirius XM to talk with Howard Bender and Andrew Cooper, and did not realize my son was hitting cleanup that night. And when I was just before my spot, my son hit an inside the park 3-run homer. He doesn't know this, but I didn't see it, and nobody recorded it. I felt awful about it. His first one he ever hit, I was just sick. Felt awful. Fast forward to Thursday night, he's up again. I get done doing my show, go out to the ballpark, watching him. Hits a line shot down the right field line, a legit another inside the park home run, gets mobbed by his team. That one I saw, that one I got on video. If you persevere long enough, good things will happen, fathers. Sometimes they just fall in our laps. And that one happened on Thursday. So very proud of my son for that. And that was a perfect way to get my weekend going. Perfect way to get your weekend going. Jump in some FFPC drafts over at myffpc.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be good. We'll talk with you Sunday night. Pros versus Joes, League number 1.